All right, guys, before we get started today, a big thank you to our partner, Microsoft Surface, celebrating 10 years of partnership with the NFL. As the official laptop, tablet, and sideline technology provider for the LA Chargers, Microsoft Surface provides players and coaches with the tools to succeed both on and off the field every day. Learn more about Surface at surface.com. And welcome in to the final drive as the Chargers win a thriller in the desert 25-24 over the Arizona Cardinals on their final drive of the game. As always, joined by senior writer Eric Smith. Haley Elwood on assignment today, so she won't be joining us, but we'll miss Haley. Eric, let's get straight to business, man. That was a fork in the road moment for this Chargers team. And as soon as that 2-point conversion went down, I said in my head, I feel like could be a turning point for the 2022 season.
No doubt. And we talked last week on this podcast, right, that at least I said that Sunday was a must-win for the Chargers. And I know maybe the Chargers didn't, like, players and coaches didn't publicly come out and say that last week or even after the game. You know, they all kind of downplayed it a little bit. I think Derwin was the only one who came out and said, you know, yeah, we had to have this one, but they did. They couldn't go to 5-6 overall. They needed to keep pace in the AFC playoff race, considering the other teams also won yesterday. And I think even though they might not have publicly said it, the actions of going for two, we knew, and they knew too that this was the game they had to have. I think a fork in the road is a great way to put it. They chose the right path. They chose the right call to go for two. I'm in full support of that, not just because it worked. I said before they even got the ball back, I turned to someone in the press box and said, hey, if we can score, go for two, because that's where we're at in the game and in the season. And it all worked out.
I love the call, and I think it wasn't just so much the win, but the manner in which they won that I think this locker room really, really needed. They needed a win like that to, I think, help propel what they want to accomplish these last 6 games, right? They're 6-5. Not only did they need that to just for the fact that you could get above 500 to be 6-5, but the Bengals won yesterday. The Jets won yesterday. You're now tied with the Patriots, 1 game back of those guys, and there's a lot of games we can get into later in Week 13 with playoff implications. But I think just the manner in which they won, I think, put a jolt into this locker room, and I felt that immediately. I talked to Keenan Allen on the field, and I asked him, you know, when you see that call come in that you guys are going for two, what's your reaction? And he goes, yes. He wanted the ball in the offense's hands. They obviously had that play with Gerald Everett and in the playbook for a long time. Apparently, they've worked on it, and boy, did it pay off.
Yeah, that play it was in the playbook for sure, but it was in the back pocket of the playbook because they've ran that similar play or a variation of that play so many times. And I think the most notable play is the pick 6 that Herbert threw against KC back in week 2. You know, we all know that Everett kind of broke to the outside and Herbert threw it inside, a miscommunication, and got picked off. They set it up the exact same way where Herbert looked for Everett to break outside, and everyone else did too. And then the tight end goes back inside wide open. I mean, a great play call by Joe Lombardi, saving it for the perfect opportunity because, no joke, I think the Chargers have ran that play a dozen times, like so many times. So many times that people like you and I can recognize it when they run it, you know?
Yeah.
But a great play call, and I agree 1,000% with the way they won was so needed because, you know, we talked, you know, the last few weeks, man, it's tough when you lose close games, and you can fight and you can compete and you can try hard, but if you lose, that wears on you. And I could tell, like, being at 5-5, it was kind of starting to wear on the team a little bit, and they needed to win in any fashion. But getting a close win like this and being on the other side of a thrilling win, or not having a crushing loss is what they needed. And I agree. I think it's full steam ahead right now. We got 6 games left. It's still time to go. And yesterday was a great step in the right direction.
And, it didn't start great. Like a lot of these games throughout the season that have popped up, the same combination of things kind of happen, right? A slow start. You lose a key player in Corey Linsley. You lost Corey in the Kansas City game in week 2. Obviously, he was out for a game during the regular season. And then you lose him in the first half with a concussion. So you're down your all-pro center. You're down your all-pro left tackle, obviously, all year long. And you think that, this could be trouble. We're down 10-0. The run defense is still an issue. 181 yards they allowed on the ground to Arizona. And James Conner had his best game by far of the season. Kyler Murray was doing his thing on the ground. But yet, they persevere. They buckle down, and they find ways to win late in games. And you have to give the defense a ton of credit for getting the Cardinals off the field in the fourth quarter, getting the ball back to the Chargers and Justin Herbert. And, I know Brandon Staley said this in the locker room. It didn't go down for Justin the last couple of games late, but it sure went down on Sunday in Arizona. That play to Austin Eckler, the extra effort to get that touchdown. He didn't even know if it was a touchdown. He thought that they were running another play because he didn't get in at first. It said it was the 2-point play. So I think just the grit of this team was on display. It has not been pretty this season by any stretch. Yet you're 6-5. You're right in the mix in this AFC playoff picture, and you've lost so many guys. You're starting to see guys come back. We're seeing what this offense can really look like with Keenan. Like Keenan on third down, man, he is a chain mover. He can help sustain drives, and I really am looking forward to seeing Mike Williams back in the lineup. Josh Kelly getting more and more comfortable, getting back in the mix. And then, of course, Justin just orchestrating all of it.
Yeah, it's like we've said, all year, especially maybe the last few weeks, the potential for this offense is so high when everyone is in. And I think there will be a point, hopefully soon, where everyone is in that is going to return this year. Slater is still a long way away, so we're not going to count him. But, and we have to see how Corey, he's probably going to be in the protocol. We'll get an update from Coach Daly later today. But, yeah, for the most part, in terms of playmakers, the cavalry should be getting up to full speed. And I think the potential is high. You mentioned Herbert in the final 2 minutes. He needed that. He needed that, I think, to maybe quiet some doubters a little bit. People like us who see him every day, we don't doubt his ability, or his leadership or anything like that. But, yeah, when you can't deliver in a 2-minute drill back-to-back weeks in games that are on national TV, then people notice that. And, yesterday's game was not on national TV, but he came through in the clutch. I thought he was great all game, especially running the ball. He picked up a couple big runs on the ground. But that final drive, that's why he's going to get paid a lot of money. And that's why he's, to me, a top 5 quarterback in this league, because he came through when the team needed him most, and just the way he executed that final drive too. Everyone talks about the touchdown to Eckler. You and I have seen that play 100 times this year already, right? The fake handoff in the flat.
As a matter of fact, Eric, our photographer Ty Now said he's probably shot that play so many times this season because it looks the way that I saw one of his shots. I was like, man, we've seen that touchdown many times this year.
A ton. And so even more so than that, even more so than the touchdown and the 2-point conversion, I thought the biggest play of the drive was 3rd and 7 at the 11. If it was a chaotic play with the play clock winding down, Eckler is lined out way to the left, and I saw Herbert trying to get him back to the backfield. He had to yell at him probably 3 or 4 times. It was loud. Eckler's probably 20 yards away. He finally gets him in there. Herbert changes the play to a screen. a perfect audible for the zone defense that Arizona was running. The perfect play call. They get 10 yards. Eckler just gets down to the 1. They can run more time off the clock, and it worked out great. So a brilliant drive by Herbert, and that's why he's who he is.
Yeah, he was also the Chargers' leading rusher on Sunday, 4 for 38. He had the 2 longest rushes of the game for the Chargers. The team didn't really run the football. 13 for 65. As I mentioned, Herbert had 4 of those carries. Let's give DeAndre Carter a ton of credit, man. 7 for 73 in the touchdown.
The punt return.
I think Omar wrote about DeAndre for Chargers.com, right? So, this guy was, a kick returner, punt returner specialist signed this offseason with wide receiver ability, right? I think a lot of people may plugged him in as wide receiver number 5. He had a good year last year with Washington in the special teams game, but also catching some touchdowns for the first time in his career. And I think when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert, he can find those guys. He can maximize those guys' ability. And, I thought DeAndre played great going back to the Bay Area in that first half against the 49ers. And with Mike down again, 7 for 73, including a 33-yard touchdown. Keenan got his first touchdown of the year. Obviously, Austin caught 11 balls. But I think DeAndre Carter was kind of the unsung hero of that game, Eric.
I was going to say, DeAndre's not going to win any team MVP awards, but he's got to be up there for unsung hero or under the radar guys who have played a big role this year. He's having the best year of his career receiving, and like you said, he was kind of brought in as a return specialist. That's what most people viewed him as, and he still made an impact yesterday with that 20-yard punt return he had in the final minute was massive. You add on the 5-yard penalty that Arizona got. The fact that Chargers were able to start at the 38 and not have to drive 75 yards for a touchdown was key. That it's such a different mindset when you only have to go 40 yards to go win the game. But major kudos to DeAndre. He's been fantastic this year. I do want to give a shout out to a guy. So this guy was only on the field for 2 offensive snaps yesterday. I can't tell you what the other one was, but on one of them, he recovered a fumble. That's Michael Bandy. That we talked about the slow start. That was a massive play in the game, at least for me, because at that point, the Chargers are down 10-0. It looks like they just fumbled it away. Nothing's going right. If Arizona goes down and makes it 13-0, 17-0, totally different game.
Yeah.
And so I don't even know how Bandy got the ball because the ref initially ruled that the Cardinals did, but somehow the Bolts keep possession down 10-0. They get a touchdown to Keenan, and at 10-7, it's a totally different game. So credit to DeAndre, but credit to Bandy as well.
And I'm also going to, we're in the shout out part of the program right now. So how about Cameron Dicker once again? Because in week 5 of this year, he went to Arizona as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles and had the 23-yard game-winning field goal to help Philly beat Arizona. A month later, he comes back to Arizona and is responsible for 5 points. The Chargers needed all of them. This season, he's 10 of 10 on extra points. He's 10 of 10 on field goals. Majority of those have come with the Chargers. And that phase of the game, I think we said it last week, Eric. I'll continue to just shower praise on Ryan Ficken's unit because they have been rock solid this year. The kicking game has been excellent. And, we tend to focus on that 2-point conversion at the end of the game, right? And Gerald Everett, that won the game. But you needed those 5 points from Cameron Dicker to even be in that conversation.
For sure. You needed the 5 points from him. You needed DeAndre's punt return. You needed J.K. Scott to pin Arizona deep. I think he pinned him inside the 20, 4 different times. And 2 of them came late. The Arizona was pinned at the 6, I think in the fourth quarter, at the 10. It's just such a different mindset when they're pinned deep, and they can't maybe go to their full arsenal of plays that they want. And the defense kind of gets amped up there too. They know, hey, we have them pinned deep. Let's try to get off the field and give our offense good field position. It took a few tries, The third time, I guess, kind of was the charm for the team in general, because the offense went out there down 24-17 three different times with the chance to go tie it or take the lead. First two times went nowhere. But the third time, like I said, they got great field position and they found a way to get it done.
I really want to dig into this Raiders game on Sunday. So to put a bow on Arizona, the Chargers fans brought it, man. That was a really cool scene in Arizona to see all the powder blue in the stands. And what I thought was even cooler was so many fans stayed well after the game just to show love to all the players, the coaches, the staff. So it felt like a home away from home. And I know you felt the same way, man, because to see that scene after the game, especially when you win the way you win, that was kind of the cherry on top.
Yeah, great fan support. I noticed it pregame. I was hanging out on the Chargers sideline, and the Chargers players ran out for warm-ups. And I'm like, man, it's loud in here. And I just kind of looked around. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of powder blue. To me, right, this is just one man's opinion, but it was louder when the Chargers ran out for warm-ups than when Arizona players did. And on the whole, there were more Cardinals fans, obviously, by kickoff. But at that point in the game, the Bolt fam showed up early. They showed up early, ready to support. Definitely had some juice going. And I think the players felt fed off that for sure. And they needed all that. It's not easy to win in the NFL. The Chargers know that very well. And that energy definitely came through.
Hard to believe that going into that game, especially because the Cardinals made the playoffs last year, they were 1-9 in their last 10 home games at State Farm Stadium, not counting Mexico City last week because that was a default home game. Now they're 1-10. So it's a reeling Cardinals team, but the Chargers can kind of use this as momentum. And here we go. Back to the scene of Week 18 last year against the Las Vegas Raiders. And you talk about a play or two that can kind of maybe flip your season a little bit. I know it's late in the game for the Raiders to flip their season. I think their season is probably lost at this point due to so many losses early in the year. But to have a walk-off victory with Davante Adams catching a touchdown in Denver, and then to have a walk-off in Seattle, who is contending for a division and a playoff spot. Josh Jacobs, I think, goes 86 yards in Seattle. Back-to-back walk-off overtime wins for the Raiders, and now the Chargers are up in Las Vegas. We kind of touched on all the positive things that happened on Sunday. One thing that continues to plague this team is run defense. I think it's the fifth straight game that a team has rushed for 157 yards or more. It was 181 on Sunday in Arizona. And now it's Josh Jacobs. So I think priority A, B, and C is stopping Jacobs. And then we get to Davante Adams, Eric.
Sure, yeah. Agreed. And someone said it in the locker room. I was kind of one of the last ones to leave the locker room last night, and someone was like, man, the Raiders are up next. And someone else was like, yep, got to stop the run. And immediately that's what the focus was for players and coaches. Because the Raiders, even though they're under 500, we know it's not going to be an easy game, right? It's an AFC West game. When you play teams like that twice a year, they're always close. And look at the Chargers games against AFC West opponents this year. Okay, they beat the Raiders by 5. They lost to the Chiefs twice by 3, and they beat Denver by 3. Those are all close games. This is going to be another close game. I have no doubt about it, especially with kind of the high that the Raiders are on right now. I agree with you. I think the playoffs are probably a long shot for them. They probably have to win out, and some crazy stuff has to happen. But there's no reason why they can't play spoiler to a bunch of other teams. And how much they want to knock the Chargers down and try to knock the Chargers out of a potential playoff spot. Given the history between these two teams, they don't like each other very much. There's a lot of history, recent history, including that Week 18 game. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot, but definitely priority number one, Josh Jacobs.
There's extra juice, I think, for both teams coming off of dramatic wins. In the case of the Raiders, back to back. But there's a lot of guys on this team who experienced Week 18 last year and just the bad taste in their mouth. And it really doesn't matter if it's the Raiders or it could be any team in the NFL. You better get to 7-5 if you want to maintain kind of keeping pace in that AFC playoff picture. But this one, because it's in the division, because it's back in Vegas, and because the Raiders, they're trying to establish something. Like I said, they're not probably going to make the playoffs this year, but with Josh McDaniels in his first year, I think they're trying to build something that they can kind of carry into next year. And they're starting to find something with Josh Jacobs this year, and obviously Devontae Adams is among the best in football. You go from DeAndre Hopkins to Devontae Adams, and we should mention Michael Davis, the job that he did on Hopkins yesterday too. But I would say Jacobs, he got to stop the run, and I'm hopeful this team can improve in that category, because I think we said this last week. Teams are going to continue to try to run the football until the Chargers can prove they can stop it.
And even teams that aren't great at running the football are running the football well against the Chargers. And that was Arizona. I mean, you mentioned James Conner had his biggest game of the year. They weren't a great rushing team. The Cardinals weren't going into Week 12. But, yeah, you look down, and, I'm looking at it here, 181 yards. It's like that's like a season high for a lot of teams, and that's almost like a weekly occurrence against the Chargers. They've changed up their meetings. They've had full team meetings. They're not doing just position group meetings when it comes to the run game. So they're trying, behind the scenes, stuff to figure it out and try to fix the run. At this point, I don't know what the fix is. It's been long enough now where it's certainly an issue. But I feel like you got to throw like everything, but the kitchen sink at Jacobs, and then you just hope that Adams doesn't beat you deep. Because if the Raiders can run the ball like they have been, then you just know Raiders are gonna go play action and just go deep to Devontae, and that's a bad combination.
Yeah. We'll have much more on this on Chargers Weekly Thursday in terms of the Raiders game. Finally, Eric, I'm trying to pull up. All right, so Week 13, there's a lot of huge games in the NFL, particularly in the AFC. Buffalo at New England Thursday night. The Jets, who I mentioned, won with Mike White under center, are 7-4. They'll take on the Minnesota Vikings. Big game. Miami at San Francisco, gigantic game that I'm fascinated to see, really, because San Francisco shut out, I think, their last four opponents in the second half. I mean, their defense is unbelievable, and we know what Miami is doing through the air this year. Kansas City at Cincinnati, and then, of course, the Chargers at the Raiders. So we've said this week to week, the three teams that you need to keep eyes on as it relates to the playoff picture and the wild card are the Jets, the Bengals, and the Patriots. The Patriots play the Bills, the Jets play the Vikings, and the Bengals play the Chiefs. So there could be a lot of movement. And frankly, think about this too. If Miami loses to San Francisco and the Chargers beat the Raiders, you got a game against the Dolphins where you could get the tiebreaker over those guys if they don't win the AFC East. So these next 2 weeks, Eric, are going to be a little chaotic in the AFC, and things will finally kind of start to, I don't want to say settle in, but you may get a clearer picture of what to expect in December.
Yeah, and I think that's why yesterday's win was so big, because as we stand today, the Chargers are still the number 9 team in the AFC. We did not jump up any spots, but we didn't lose any spots either. I think
That was it. Maintain.
Just maintain. You have to keep pace, and this is like this is kind of comes into my favorite time of the year where it feels like every game in the final 6 weeks of the season, every week in the final 6 games, there's 3 to 4 games that are just massive, just huge games, and that includes our own. If it's me, I think we're rooting for Buffalo on Thursday because to me it's a 4-team race for 2 spots, and the teams you talked about, the Jets, the Patriots, the Bengals, and us going for those final 2 wild card spots. So I think we're rooting for Buffalo on Thursday. I'm pulling for my Vikings. And the Jets. They need to help us out for sure. I'll send a few texts try to get them motivated. And then oddly enough, we are rooting for the Chiefs. Are we not?
I mean, I think at this point, with Cincinnati in the Chargers' way right now, as it relates to the wild card, yeah. I think that's the move. And then I think with San Francisco and Miami, like if San Francisco beats the Dolphins, the AFC East is all jumbled up at that point. So yeah, like again, Chargers just need to beat the Raiders to make sure that all this stuff even matters for them. Yeah. But I looked at the slate last night and I said, wow, like because usually the games aren't as big. Like there aren't like 5 games like this that have like big time playoff implications. And week 13, man, it feels like this is almost like a separation Sunday type situation, right? Where you can really see what direction some of these contenders are going.
Yeah, for sure. And we have to preface it by saying, okay, we're rooting for teams A, B, and C to win. We're rooting for the Chargers to win first because if all the other games break LA's way, but we don't beat the Raiders, it's a moot point. It really is a moot point because then we don't gain ground. And at some point, like while it's fine, like yesterday we kept pace. There's only 6 games left. At some point, you're gonna have to start gaining ground. And I think this is week 13 is the week to do it.
Yep. No question about it, man. Any final thoughts as we get out of here?
Man, I needed some Tylenol after that game yesterday. It was it was chaotic, but it's the Chargers, so I have a big bottle in my backpack. It's just every week, man. You're just popping that Tylenol because it's such a crazy season. But this is it. This is like I said, this is my favorite time of the year. The stretch run, 6 games left. It's time for this team to show what they're made of.
December football, from one desert to another, right? December football starts in Las Vegas on Sunday for the Chargers. They get a huge, much-needed victory, 25-24 over the Cardinals at State Farm Stadium. For Eric Smith, I'm Chris Hayre. We'll have you covered on Chargers Weekly. Eric will have you covered on Chargers.com all week long to get you ready for this big divisional matchup. It's Raiders week. For Eric, I'm Chris. This is The Final Drive.